Let's start with the Tuchel news, actually, because it's the news of the day, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to put it in. I'm going to lead both headlines with it, I'd say.
Okay. Both headlines?
I think so, because it's going to get the most. Unless Colin says something explosive about...
I don't know about that.
About Rory Gallagher.
Yeah, cool. Okay, let's do it. Hello, everybody. So here we are for a little gathering, a few bits and bobs to get through. Conan, hello.
Hello, Joe.
Ronan, hello to you.
Hi, Joe.
A little bit sick. If I sound sick, apologies. These things happen, you know. Joe Canning was very good yesterday, wasn't he? We didn't really get a chance to talk about it because we all just darted out the door, but I did think to myself, what a thoughtful and in a good way intense kind of a personality, you know.
It's something magnetic about it. I would make the social media video clips, and normally I'd be cutting out, gaps when people are thinking, when they're delaying, when they're even going, But with Joe, there's something that draws you in with that. I kept every single pause that he had because you like seeing that thoughtfulness of him.
No, there's also an authenticity and self-awareness in a good way about him. Like, you're never under the illusion that he's giving you anything other than what he's actually thinking in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
I think, and also the autobiography, which I've read a bit of, and equally the Johnny Sexton one, they're kind of an antidote to what felt like a good decade there where the majority of books were overly sanitized, and it seems like neither of them left anything out. Like, it's kind of very frank and upfront, which is good.
Yeah, to a point. I mean, I wouldn't go overboard on that. I think there's still even plenty out, but maybe.
Think so?
Yeah. They have to.
Ah, well, I don't expect them to go too. Like, it's not everyone's Andre Agassi, but like.
No, I think they're telling their stories very well, but I think they both have a strong sense of loyalty still to the dressing room. So you're not getting a full sense. Like Keith Earls is a good example. It's an excellent book when it's about Keith.
Yeah.
But when he's talking about what went wrong at Munster over the last decade, the shutters are down 3/4 of the way. And I understand that. I mean, you're then divulging secrets of dressing rooms.
Maybe I've read too many bad autobiographies.
Yeah, you're beaten down. Even just a glimmer of honesty as you like.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, enthralled. So we'll get to a few things. Noel got back in touch, he who was complaining there's too much content, and so he's done the right thing here. Thanks for the shout out, lads. Good news, Diary of a CEO has been binned. Too long, and he didn't even talk to CEOs. Not really the point of that show anymore.
No comment on Diary of a CEO.
That show was also very long. Like, that was the right one to think about.
That's freed up a lot of time. He said, so we're getting there. My next step is to listen at 1.5 speed. Have you ever done that?
I like 1.2. It's good.
Yeah.
I hate my voice in 1.5 speed. I mean, if your father already thinks I sound 50, 60, I sound... Oh, my God.
Stephen Derry emailed in, lads, I know you all love a good sports documentary, and I'm sure you've already watched this. Did I miss Joe on the red carpet of Chasing the Sun 2? Wow. He's front of house as lead villain with Matt Williams. It's hilarious seeing Razzie use Joe and the lads for his pre-match motivation. You really got under his skin. On the sports documentary theme, is there any sign of a show dedicated to the best out there? And he goes off to list several. Many of them familiar to us, I would think. The one that I saw that was a bit unusual was, I detest cricket, but I found The Test on Prime, which followed the Aussies after the ball tampering scandal, to be right up there. All the best, lads. Stephen Deary. I am vaguely aware of this Chasing the Sun 2 situation. Rory O'Connor gleefully informed me of it one day when it was just first out. The Virgin Media World Cup coverage, I think, was a source of motivation for the South African team.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, somebody told me that some of the editing is a bit suspect, as in South African player is injured and at borderline cuts to the Virgin studio laughing uproariously.
You sound like a reality TV star now, saying the edit wasn't kind on me.
No, but I mean, that didn't sound good.
Much on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
I remember trying to interview Neil McGee after Donegal beat Derry in Celtic Park, and he said, yeah, no problem. I said, do you mind if I do a little video? This is 2014. This video was coming in. He said, no problem. And then the assistant manager, McGonigal, was walking past and said, that's the guy who wrote the article, Neil. And Neil just started giving me a little brush on the chest and said, no, you're all right.
Ouch.
Walked away.
The article.
The article.
But sorry, Joe Canning and Sexton. There's a chapter in Canning's book where he goes through numerous slights, media slights, things that were said, his comments taken out of context. I mean, we talked a lot about the 2012 one, which is kind of the headline situation when it comes to him in the media. But there's a chapter later on where he just goes through all sorts of incidents, including, I think, maybe... Well, he didn't name the website. I suspected it might have been your former workplace. I wasn't sure, but it was a kerfuffle. So, but Sexton's the same.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. To leave nothing to the imagination. When they're going for it, they're going for it, you know? There's no beating around the bush with it.
There's a good story in Canning's book, which we didn't get to yesterday, whereby Joe Canning, maybe the greatest hurler of this century and beyond, spends time in the forums seeing what the fans are saying about him. And I don't mean when he's 20, I mean when he's 25 and a bit older.
God.
And so there's a great scene where they've beaten Clare in a game. And one of the chief online forum types is a fan and comes onto the pitch, is like first over to Joe. What do I, you know? And Canning tells him to F off.
Oh, because he's done his digging.
Because he knows.
Oh my God.
I know you're JT47627.
Takes one to know one.
There must be a certain standard you get to where you're too good to care about that.
Well, clearly Johnny Sexton and Joe Canning never reached that standard.
My God.
So let's bring people up to speed on what's going on. Just a brief mention, by the way. I watched the highlights. Lionel Messi scored a hat-trick last night in a World Cup qualifier at 37 years of age for Argentina. 6-0 win against Bolivia. They were good goals as well. And the whole stadium is thronged, full. And every time he scores, they're all just doing the kind of, we're not worthy, help hands up and down. Kind of amazing. Thomas Tuchel, though, has stolen everybody's thunder, or stolen Lionel's thunder, certainly. He's been confirmed as the England manager. Most recently at Bayern, they lost in the Champions League semi-final to Real Madrid. The word is that Munich did want to keep him, but he decided to walk. It was a combustible enough relationship, it seems.
Yeah.
His appointment does explain, perhaps, Lee Carsley slightly confusing dispatches. Maybe he was given a nod that things are afoot. And I guess this looks to me like a brilliant appointment. I don't know if I'm in a minority of one here, but I have Tuchel as absolute top-tier manager. What he did at Chelsea was phenomenal. And he strikes me as kind of the tier that was largely consigned to the club game, because that's where the best managers want to be. So I think this is a real coup for England. Although the Mail sports department do not think that. Mail sport reporter is the author of this piece, so it's kind of a quasi editorial, or else whoever wrote it was like, well, I don't need the hassle today, but I'll write the piece for you. So the Mail back page is giant headline: "It's a dark day for England as the manager's job goes to a," in capitals, German. And Thomas Tuchel only has 18 months to prove he's up to it. So the gist of the piece: we have Thomas Tuchel, comma, once again, a German. You can't say that enough. With questionable managerial background. I think questionable's hard. I mean, management's hard. You're going to have, or harsh, you're going to have failures. FA are running around like headless chickens. A fair point is, what does it say about the English coaching system? I've no problem with that point. How insulting, ignorant and unforgivably short-sighted would Spain or France take this approach? The concluding line is, this is a dark day for English football. We are the laughing stock of the world game.
Oh, I don't know. Like, on paper, they arguably have the best international manager in the world now. You know, with the possible exception of Nagelsmann, who ironically, you know, a compatriot. But yeah, there's so many layers to this. I think it's going to be a source of intrigue for a long time, because I don't think he takes over until 2025, and there is another window before that. So there's going to be a lot of musing over the pros and cons. But like, I think questionable is harsh, isn't it? Like 2 Champions League finals, won one of them.
I think so.
Did a tremendous, went from a firefighting job in Stamford Bridge to winning the Champions League with them.
That was one of the great jobs that season.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The only thing, and the days are getting away from me, but I think it was Monday when I said about him emerging as the prospective candidate, and I was like, you know, if people were clamouring for England to like let the shackles off, that he's probably just going to bring new shackles. You know what I mean? Like different type of shackles. He's not going to be get all my attacking players on the pitch. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Lee Carsley at home to Greece has probably proven that for him.
Yeah, so I think there'll be a bit more pragmatism about him than maybe the swashbuckling football England fans were hoping for in this next phase. But for them, I think it's a win now appointment, put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not being contrarian here.
Oh, here we go.
And I'm not taking...
Exactly what a contrarian would say.
Yeah. But is Tuchel's record one of the most overrated in world football? So what he did at Chelsea, amazing. Class achievement. He's obviously a good manager, but just go through it. I always find it a little... Everyone's very quick to just automatically put him in the top bracket of managers, and I just don't know if he's done it that often, that consistently for that long to really be put into that same bracket as he's always put in with Pep, with Klopp, whoever else. But the reality is, I mean, I heard some of the record now when he's taken over England. It sounds great. He's won a league in Germany, but he didn't win that league. Nagelsmann won that league and got booted out with a few games to go. Tuchel came in, got the medal, and then messed it up the next year. Now, you're right, Bayern did end up wanting him back after they said we're getting rid of you, and I think the fans were a big part of that, so there is something to that. He's obviously a really good manager, but I always just think we're very quick to say he's definitely in the elite bracket, because I don't know if he is. I don't know if his record speaks to that.
Like, just one other observation I would have about him as a person, and you touched on Bayern kind of wanting to keep him. He has an interesting relationship with German football at large. Just he's kind of seen as one of these, not a football man. So the contemporary or the comparison between, like, Lothar Matthäus, let's just say, is one of the foremost pundits over there, and he's kind of always looking at Tuchel a little bit of side eye, like, what do you really know about this game, And I always think he doesn't feel appreciated over there. And that was borne out with the tension he would have had with the Bayern hierarchy, who are very much just a group of football men. So I think the fact that he as a German is taking the England manager job is indicative of him a little bit, I think. He knows the storm that's coming. He's not going to be warmly welcomed back when he goes home. So, yeah, I think it's extremely striking from all sides.
He's always struck me as a very strong personality. So I think in the way that Carsley has perhaps struggled with a slightly bullying English media.
Yes.
Tuchel will have no problem staring down those guys.
Yeah.
And that is an aspect of the job. Southgate did it through charm and statesman-like demeanour. Tuchel will do it through grumpiness and fear and snapping at them.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. There'll be no darts games. There'll be no paddle competitions between journalists and football players. He's not going to care about what they think.
He's a great communicator. Like,
he's so charming and he communicates well. Yeah.
But he can switch it in a way Southgate couldn't, and that's going to be interesting to watch.
One of the stories this week which caught the eye is Ryder Cup tickets in Bethpage Black are going to cost per day $750. Now, in Rome, they were $250. That's a hell of a jump in 2 years. I know America's gone crazy. I think I was talking to somebody in New York the other day, and they were saying like a standard Americano is kind of $8 now. That's about where things are, which is hard to fathom. But $750 for one day at the Ryder Cup. I mean, if you're a European fan, you can't really fly all the way out, book your accommodation and go for one day. You certainly have to go for two, if not three. And so suddenly the maths are insane. Now, the striking thing about this is maybe it's to do with the demographic who follow golf, but they're having no problem selling them. And
really?
Yeah. And so it just kind of... It further underlines this sense that you can charge now whatever you want for sporting events, for concert tickets, the experience economy. Funflation is kind of what everybody's been calling it for the last couple of years. So the Ryder Cup organisers have cited macroeconomic pressures, post-COVID supply chain, war in Ukraine, inflation is up kind of 22% versus Rome, all that kind of stuff. I read it a couple of weeks ago and I thought it was a great piece at the time, and it just came back to me on foot as seeing the Ryder Cup tickets situation by James Marriott in the London Times. This was around the Oasis tickets, which were, as we know, dynamically priced. And he had a really interesting, I thought, thoughtful piece on the experience economy, which is booming. So the trend is just fairly well accepted at this stage that people are sooner splurging on experiences over possessions. They will go to the concert over getting the Dyson. And he was citing the Evening Standard as well, which reports there's been a huge surge in ultra expensive restaurants, £150 sterling or more per head for a meal. His case is booming sector in London. But again, and I suspect it's probably akin to the Ryder Cup tickets. It's not just the uber wealthy. He says the custom is coming not from only the wealthy, but from aspirational middle class, for whom a dinner is no longer merely a meal, but another opportunity for a memorable experience. And he obviously, he cites that obvious connection between experience economy and the online world, whereby we like displaying our life online. We have seen the Instagram posts of Coldplay, the best night at the best concert with the best people, that kind of stuff, And he's, kind of musing on how we lack ritual, obviously, increasingly in the absence of religion. And we lack a set piece event to take us out of our ordinary, mundane daily lives. I mean, I love you guys, but it's mundane. And it's only a Wednesday and the weather's a bit grim. So, it's one day blends into the next. And he says, if you lack friends, a year can easily drift by in a grey uniformity. Your work, commute, screens, home, rinse, wash, repeat. So something like the Taylor Swift concerts where there's like there was a community aspect to that, there was kind of Dublin was love bombed by all accounts on those evenings. And I think that especially applies to sport. Like, what quicker way to go from no friends and life a bit colourless to being a supporter of a team and you're instantly plugged in. So he reckons, I suspect many people are willing to spend huge sums of money on experiences because they're not merely buying a fun night out, but a part of what they hope will eventually add up to something like the meaning of their whole lives. And he doesn't want to be a total grump about these things. He says, it's not to deny the fun of expensive restaurants and concerts. It's just to suggest that the huge quantities of money people are ready to expend on these experiences are a sign that, I thought this was a great line, we're loading them with more significance than they can properly bear. They say, it is the best night of my life. It is the best, etc. So I guess the conclusion is, don't pay $750 to go to the Ryder Cup for a day.
And it's a cut-off point that you're talking about, because when you said sport there, I was like, oh, but I love nothing more than going to a sport match. But there has to be a limit to how much it's valued, especially to how much is given your life. And I was thinking then, actually, what I love most is going to a sport match, a GA match in particular, in autumn, when there's that real community feel. It's a club game, there's a bit of frost in the air, it's a double header. Maybe your team's won the first game and you're just sitting there now for the second match, ready to shout all sorts at the referee and just enjoy the occasion. And that's, there's something really lovely about that, but that's £10 to get in.
And it's interesting on the not feeling ripped off thing. I was just looking, so Hustle did a survey of people who'd gone to some uber expensive concert. They surveyed 350 people of them coming out from the concert. And 40% of them said that actually the experience was tainted by the knowledge at all times of just how much they paid to be there.
Yeah. And I think the question I would love to ask those people then in that same survey is, would you have spent more than £300 if you couldn't put this on your social media? Because it does feel like a lot of people go to, not just events, but a lot of people do things to say that they've done things, or it might not just be social media. It's when that question comes up, what did you do at the weekend?
Yeah.
Well, I went to Taylor Swift. Bang, there you go. You're living a great life. Wish I could have a bit of that. But also, like, the idea that, I think it's written in that piece, of people going to the concerts with their phones up. Nobody's watching that concert on your Instagram stories. Nobody's pressing the volume button up. It's just like, oh my God, look, there's 50 stories there now.
They never come out well, those concert videos, do they?
Someone screaming in the background if you do turn the volume up. But yeah, I would love to know how much people would actually pay if they couldn't record it on their phone.
But I suppose that the worry is, and it's happened with concerts in Dublin, like, there is no doubt that international artists, when they're sitting down and planning out their global tour, their management team are saying, by the way, Dublin's an absolute home run, charge whatever you want, no problemo. It would be slightly worrying if other sporting bodies are looking at the tickets for Ryder Cup and saying $750. Okay, Ireland, New Zealand is now €250. In fact, actually, it's €400 and we'll still fill the Aviva. You just kind of worry about that creep, and I suspect it's going to happen.
Yeah, like, there is the currency of it, obviously, what people can spend, and also, as you two have both alluded to there, the preeminent social currency of our time is social media clicks and likes, and people will counterpoise those and be like, the sort of opportunity cost of, as you said, buying a Dyson. I'm going to get, number one, I'm going to get an experience, but I'm also going to get the up of loads of people telling me, "Oh, that looks amazing." So that's not insignificant. And also, I'm not probably not qualified enough to make this assessment, but I do think there is.
Well, we're on a podcast, so by all means, fire ahead.
Yeah, like I'm kind of just musing a little bit, but there's a generation now who like maybe are the first where the aspiration of like owning your own house is a pipe dream, and they're not in the lowest class where they don't have disposable income, so they have to spend it on something.
That's interesting.
Do you know what I mean? And and then I think there's probably a separate podcast in this, but like we're probably playing a little bit of catch up with America in general on the ticket front. Like dynamic pricing hit them a decade ago, and they've kind of coped with it. And we were just chatting earlier, it does work the other way as well, where it can dynamically price down. So you look at NFL games, most of those stadiums are 70,000, 80,000 capacity, and most of those teams are non-competitive after a few weeks. So you can rock up there and get tickets for like $8, $10, $15, which might have initially been priced at $100. You know what I mean? So they've kind of they've made their peace with that a little bit, I think. But yeah, and again, America versus Europe is just the thing that we're going to have to contend with, because like I was at Adele in the summer in Munich.
Oh yeah.
And she has done a residency in Las Vegas, for those who aren't familiar. So she doesn't really tour anymore. You come to see Adele kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she's been doing Las Vegas, and she basically transposed her Vegas prices to Munich, and they didn't sell fast at all. Like everyone balked at them, like, and like, no way. So much so that in the weeks preceding those concerts, they had to do what was called like a secret bundle, and they just gave away, you paid €30 and you were put into a draw, and if you were picked out, you got a €30 ticket, which is, it raises some questions around contention for the super fans who did pay like $500 to see her, you know? So I just think it's a brand new fangled thing over here, and it's how we kind of make peace with it compared to how the Americans did.
I hope we all just balk and force them into reducing prices.
Yeah.
I suspect that may not happen. The Alex Ferguson story is kind of come and gone a touch, but if you missed it, so he's been global ambassador obviously at Manchester United since he stepped down in 2013, so that's a decade. The 2014 accounts show that he was paid $2 million for that year, so I can presume it's been a minimum of $2 million for a decade and maybe a bit more of late. So you're talking 20 million quid plus, probably 25 million over 10 years. It's been a decent deal, I would think. That's a good pension. He's 83 years of age. And this is a club obviously cutting costs, and they've cut 250 jobs, for instance, this year. But the reaction is kind of, I suppose, as you might expect. Eric Cantona leading the line. Sir Alex Ferguson should be able to do anything he wants at the club until the day he dies. Such a lack of respect. It is totally scandalous. Sir Alex Ferguson will be my boss forever, and I throw them all in a big bag of shit. I grew up a Manchester United fan, so he's got an incredibly soft spot in my heart. Obviously, you just can't you can't shake that. I have no problem with this whatsoever. This 83-year-old man has just been given 20 to 25 million quid over the last decade. It's, in footballing terms, one of the great pensions, one of the great we've looked after you situations. He remains a non-executive director, by the way. So
yeah, he's not forgoing his like cushy like tickets on the halfway line, I presume.
No, he maintains his director's box and his table for 8 at Old Trafford.
So I think he'd be okay.
Do you know? But like it's like,
dynamic pricing, he could make that money.
But he could. But there's a degree of this is an outrage, and that he's been cast aside. I just think it's we need to all take a step back. This is fine.
Yeah.
And I think, to be fair, there's a degree of Ferguson. Look, I'm sure he'd take the 2 million quid, no problem.
Yeah.
But I think there's a degree also. So the reporting says, and maybe that's what Manchester United want. But he's 83, and so he's kind of cutting back on certain things. Maybe he's not going to go to every match forever and a day. So I don't know. It's like no problem by me here.
I don't think so either. I think, and it seems like needless to say, they would have broached it with him. It's not like he was an email, by the way. So I think, yeah,
they finally sacked him. What they should have done all those years ago.
Yeah. It's a bit strange getting up in arms about somebody not being given 2 million quid to do nothing, really. Like, I know everybody loves Alex Ferguson. He's the greatest manager for me of all time. But, I mean, he still can do whatever he wants around the club, to Eric Cantona's point. They're just not going to pay him 2 million quid for that.
Yeah. Cantona has positioned that as if he was just taken out at the back door.
Yeah, shocked out.
By the way, on our emailer earlier on, who was talking about the documentaries, he did include a PS for Conan. What in God's name is going on with Derry? Carl Lacey, another man to be named and squashed immediately. A mess, says Stefan. This is the vacant Derry managerial posting. Is it actually a mess?
I'm starting to come back around the other way now and starting to look more sympathetically towards the county board here.
You actually are a contrarian.
No, it is a mess in that, like, Mickey Hart left on July 8th.
Okay.
So I was texting my old colleague Cahir O'Kane this morning, and he was saying it's day 100 today. 100 days since Mickey Hart left, and they haven't been able to get a manager. And
Mark Hannam grinning to himself.
exactly. And Tuchel's off the table now as well, so maybe that's another one that they were after.
And do we think the 100 days is because they just can't get anyone? It's an attractive job, no?
This is why I'm coming back the other way now. I mean, we can't suggest that the county board haven't tried to get the top tier managers. You know, like they've gone after so many people. This goes right back to when Gallagher left, and you know, the word that I had gotten that they went after Jim Gavin initially. Why wouldn't you just ask the question? Got told no, and started moving down the list. James Horan was in there. This is before Kieran Mina got the job. Kieran Mina did well, got offered a job, didn't want the job. Then they went back to Malachy O'Rourke. Didn't want it, took the Tyrone job. Maybe that's more attractive because the only way's up with them. Whereas Derry now suddenly, after only winning twice in their last 2 decades, winning the Ulster Championship twice, maybe it feels like
their best days are just behind them.
Yeah, and you can bring it back down again. Maybe Malachy O'Rourke was too close to the picture, hearing stuff all year when he was working with Glenn. I don't know, and it's just... It's really depressing. Like anybody that I even think of, I remember saying something about Tony McEntee. Get me Tony McEntee, doing a great job with Sligo. And then suddenly that same afternoon, Sligo extend his contract.
Yeah.
You know, this is happening all over. Peter Kane was looked at, not interested. Maybe it's the location of Derry as well, that it's just so awkward to get to. It's not like there's great roads into it if you're coming from anywhere down the country. And it looks like Mark Doran, the Slough-Neil manager, is still favoured for the job.
Okay.
Who hasn't really managed. He hasn't managed a county team. He's taken Wicklow as a coach. He was in with Down as a coach of Paddy Talley. He was in with Clare. Apparently they're very fond of him. But he hasn't been a manager at this level. Conleth Gilligan signed on for another year with Armagh. Just everybody seems to be just taken.
Right. I think Conleth Gilligan will be at some point Derry manager. I think of that there's probably no doubt, like sometime down the line, but he doesn't want to, I just, not speaking for him, but I can't see him wanting to be a continuity appointment. Like it'll be his regime kind of thing, and if he's taking that job, he'll kind of want to put his own shape on it. At the moment it does feel, rightly or wrongly, that whoever is appointed wasn't first choice, and that's kind of off-putting for any prospective candidate, I would say.
Yeah.
And so Carl Lacey was mentioned there in the email. Was he rumoured?
I was shocked when I heard that he was the favourite, but there's a new favourite every week. I couldn't see him taking it. He's just so entrenched with Donegal. Then when the draw came out, Derry away to Donegal and Ballybuffet first round of the championship. That'd be a weird situation for Carl Lacey to go back into with your neighbours. Now, Derry and Donegal don't have the same rivalry as Derry and Tyrone, so maybe there's something to that, and it's obviously a big job. It still is. It's one of the favourites for the All-Ireland, and nobody will take the job.
Yeah.
But Mark Doran, who lost to Glen in the semi-final with Slough-Neil there last weekend, left very quickly at Owen Big, didn't do any interviews, which to me would suggest maybe there's some talks going on there.
It's not inconsequential either. I suppose these FRC games are happening at the weekend, and all the inter-county managers are going to go there to Croke Park and watch these games through the prism of, oh, this will suit my player, or maybe I'll draft in this player because he'll suit this dynamic. Derry don't have that luxury of sending a manager to those games to watch them, you know.
He'll be saying that a county board executive to talk to all those managers here there watching the game. They'll all be in the one spot.
Yeah, God, everybody's suddenly looking forward to these games in a big way. So Friday, Saturday night. Fellas, let's leave it there. We have Dan McDonnell in to talk all things football later on. And again, that Joe Canyon interview sitting in your feed is well worth a listen.